We've been taught that hustle equals worth, yet this belief may be the very thing keeping us from what we truly desire. Everywhere you look, there's a relentless pressure to do more, be more, achieve more. It's in the way we talk about success, the way we schedule our days to the brim, and the way we measure our value by output. What have you done today? Isn't just a question, it's a quiet judgment, whispered through decades of conditioning. But what if that very hustle, that very momentum we so proudly worship, is the thing keeping us stuck? What if doing more is not the solution, but the problem? The truth is, many of us are moving too fast to realize we're running in circles. We chase goals we never questioned, respond to demands that drain us, and measure our progress in numbers, not presence. We stay busy because slowing down feels too dangerous. Stillness becomes synonymous with laziness. And yet, in that stillness lies the most potent kind of power. We've confused movement with progress and urgency with purpose. But the quantum pause invites us into a radical reframe, that the real shift, energetically, spiritually, and physically, happens not when we push harder, but when we finally allow ourselves to stop. It is not passive, it is not lazy. It is the conscious act of reclaiming our inner authority, of stepping back into alignment before stepping forward into action. Pause isn't absence, it's presence. It's the place where intention gets purified, where scattered energy returns to the core. In physics, we know that particles behave differently when observed. They respond to consciousness. And in the same way, our lives begin to shift the moment we become aware of the programs we're unconsciously running. The constant need to prove, to achieve, to be on is a residue of a system that taught us our worth is external. But you are not a machine. You are a field of frequency, and that frequency is disrupted when you force what's not meant, when you move without harmony, when you chase without clarity. So the invitation is simple, yet profound. What would happen if you paused, not out of exhaustion, but out of reverence? Not because you gave up, but because you woke up. Because here's the thing, they never told you that rest recalibrates your magnetism. That silence sharpens your signal, that by doing less, you might actually start allowing more. You don't need to burn out to be valuable. You don't need to be exhausted to be worthy. You don't need to chase in order to be chosen. All of that was a lie woven into the culture of hyperproductivity, where speed was mistaken for strength and achievement for alignment. But the soul doesn't speak the language of hustle. It speaks in rhythm, in resonance, in stillness. And if you stop, just for a moment, you might hear it again. The soft, ancient voice beneath the noise. The one that reminds you, you are already enough. The one that doesn't need to prove, but simply to be. So, where in your life are you still chasing something you don't believe you deserve? Maybe that's where your quantum pause is waiting. Not as a punishment, but as a portal. Not as an end, but as a sacred return. When we stop moving, the universe can start aligning. It's not laziness, it's listening. There's a silence, a pause, a sacred breath between all things that we've been taught to fear. But what if it was the most intelligent place to be? What if the space between thoughts, the lull between efforts, the breath between intentions is where creation actually happens? This isn't about doing nothing, it's about doing differently. Stillness is not the enemy of success, it is the container through which success flows. The quantum pause is not the absence of energy, it is the amplification of intentional energy. When you stop the noise, the deeper song of the universe becomes audible. When you step back, patterns become visible, and life begins to speak in ways you previously couldn't hear. Think about it. A bow pulled too tight snaps. A field overfarmed yields no harvest. A mind overstimulated loses its wisdom. The modern world praises productivity, but ancient wisdom praises rhythm. Nature doesn't bloom all year. The moon waxes and wanes. Even your heartbeat rests between each beat. So why do you deny yourself the sacred pause? In quantum terms, it's not about effort but observation. The observer effect teaches us that the very act of perceiving shifts the outcome. You don't always need to push particles into place. You need to attune to their behavior, align your energy, and allow the collapse of possibility into form. This is the art of co-creation. You don't manifest from force, you manifest from fidelity to your frequency. When you pause, you calibrate. When you're still, you harmonize. There's something profoundly countercultural about choosing stillness in a world obsessed with motion. It's an act of quiet rebellion. And in that rebellion, you become sovereign again. You realize that the moment you stop rushing, life starts to reveal itself in new ways. You are no longer reacting, you're responding. You are no longer chasing, you're aligning. In your own life, have you noticed how clarity often arrives after you surrender? How some answers only come when you stop demanding them? We've all had those moments. Walking outside, doing the dishes, just breathing, when suddenly an insight arrives unannounced. That's not an accident. That's the field responding to your receptivity. The universe doesn't scream, it whispers. And in the rush of doing, we drown out the whispers of becoming. I once met a woman who had been trying to publish her novel for over 10 years. She worked hard, submitted constantly, and endured rejection after rejection. One day, burned out and heartbroken, she stopped, not out of apathy, but out of need. She stopped querying, stopped forcing, and simply returned to writing for herself. Within 6 months, a small publisher discovered her old manuscript on a forgotten platform. It wasn't because she pushed harder. It was because her energy changed. She shifted from chasing to embodying. That's the moment the field responded. This shift isn't magic, it's mechanics, the mechanics of subtle energy. When your vibration aligns with the version of reality you're calling in, life meets you halfway. But that alignment rarely happens in chaos. It happens in coherence. And coherence is born in the pause. Stillness is misunderstood because it's not loud. It doesn't come with medals or metrics, but its power lies in its subtlety. It allows energy to cohere, vision to clarify, and resonance to build. You become a lighthouse, not a searchlight. You magnetize, not manipulate. So the next time you feel stuck, don't automatically reach for more effort. Ask instead, what is this moment inviting me to hear? Because sometimes the most powerful action is no action at all, but awareness. Stillness is not emptiness. It is fullness waiting to emerge. Pause not to escape the world, but to re-enter it with sacred precision. Let the field show you the next move, not your fear. Let the silence lead, not your ego. And in that stillness, trust this. You're not falling behind. You're falling into alignment. Quantum creation begins not with effort, but with frequency. Your inner state precedes your outer results. If you've ever felt like you were doing all the right things, but nothing was changing, this is why. You can't outact a misaligned energy. You can't hustle your way into a timeline you don't energetically match. We've been conditioned to believe that results follow effort in a linear, logical path. But creation is not always linear. In quantum terms, the field doesn't respond to your effort. It responds to your energy. And energy is not just how you feel for a moment. It's the underlying signal you broadcast. Your beliefs, your expectations, your level of self-worth. That signal shapes the wave function of possibility into particles of reality. So, when you act from scarcity, you manifest more lack. When you try to earn your dream from a place of unworthiness, you repel it. That's the paradox. The harder you try, the more you prove to the field that you don't yet believe. And belief is the foundation of frequency. Your job isn't to chase the thing. Your job is to become the version of you who already lives inside that reality. This is why energy hygiene matters more than strategy. You can follow the perfect plan with the wrong vibration and still struggle. But if your frequency is clean, meaning, congruent, calm, and grounded, you often need only minimal action for massive results. It's like being in a room full of radios. If you're not tuned to the right station, you hear static. But the moment you attune, clarity floods in. Suddenly, it doesn't feel like effort, it feels like flow. One of the biggest blocks to this kind of creation is impatience. We want instant results to validate our shift, but that's backward. The frequency must hold before the form arrives. You have to stabilize the state before you see the reflection. And that can be the hardest part, holding the vibration when the evidence hasn't shown up yet. But that's also the place of greatest power, because it's where you become magnetic rather than reactive. There's a story of a man who practiced visualizing abundance every morning. He'd sit in silence and imagine himself at peace, grateful, generous, fulfilled. No begging, no doubting, just deep embodiment. At first, nothing changed. No windfalls, no miracles. But he kept the practice, not because it was working, but because it felt right. 3 months in, an unexpected promotion appeared. Not from his effort, but from alignment. He didn't attract it because he wanted it. He attracted it because he became it. The same is true in relationships. A woman I once worked with longed for partnership but kept attracting emotionally unavailable people. She did all the external work, therapy, dating apps, communication classes. But underneath, she didn't yet believe she was worthy of being chosen without performing. Her field was broadcasting effort, not ease. When she finally paused, chose to be deeply present with herself, and began treating her own solitude as sacred, her energy shifted. 3 weeks later, she met someone whose presence mirrored the peace she had found within. Coincidence? No. Resonance. So here's a truth that may feel like heresy to the old paradigm. You don't get what you want. You get what you are. Desire without embodiment is just noise in the field. But when your being aligns with your vision, reality has no choice but to respond. This doesn't mean you never act, but action becomes an extension of alignment, not compensation for lack. It's inspired, clear, potent. It feels like knowing, not grasping. You act not to get, you act because it's who you already are. If you've been stuck in cycles of burnout or disappointment, ask yourself, am I broadcasting belief or begging? Am I moving from overflow or fear? Am I aligned or just acting aligned because I'm desperate for a result? These questions aren't meant to shame. They're meant to recenter. Because your energy doesn't lie, even if your mind does. And the field responds to your dominant vibration, not your wishful thinking. So pause, breathe, and come back. Feel the version of you who doesn't chase, who doesn't plead, who doesn't panic. What would that version believe? How would they move, think, rest? Start there. Because that frequency, that identity, is the real strategy. And when you live from that place, you stop waiting for miracles. You start becoming one. Most people ask, but few are prepared to receive. Surrendering control is the final forgotten key. We've been taught to go after what we want, to knock on every door, to prove we're ready. But receiving is not about proving. It's about relaxing into trust. It's not about being worthy someday. It's about realizing you already are. There's an emotional posture to receiving. It's open, spacious, grounded, not clinging, not bracing. It's the posture of someone who no longer begs for the light, but becomes the window. But that kind of openness requires a strength we're rarely taught. Not the kind that fights or climbs, but the kind that surrenders, that lets go without collapse, that trusts without knowing every step ahead. And yet many of us subconsciously block what we claim to desire. We say we want love, but we keep our hearts armored. We say we want abundance, but we fear its responsibility. We say we want peace, but we feel guilty resting. The mind says yes, but the body says no. The words ask for miracles, but the energy says, I'm not ready. So the real question isn't, how do I get it? The question is, am I actually available to receive it? Not hypothetically, not conditionally, but wholly, fully, honestly. Because receiving isn't passive, it's deeply active, just on the inside. It's the conscious practice of making space within yourself. It's the discipline of not grasping, not rushing to fill the void, but trusting that the void is fertile, not frightening. Imagine a cup that's always full, Nothing more can enter. Now imagine a cup that's emptied, rinsed clean, held up to the sky. Which one receives the rain? The quantum pause prepares you to be that cup, still, steady, surrendered. And in that stillness, the field begins to pour. Not because you fought for it, but because you finally made space for it. In quantum philosophy, possibilities collapse into form when energy meets attention. But attention is not always a laser beam. Sometimes it's a soft gaze. Sometimes it's an open field of readiness. That openness is a frequency, and it tells the universe, I'm not just asking, I'm available. There's a beauty in waiting, not the anxious kind, but the sacred kind. The waiting that trusts something real is arriving, even when it hasn't knocked yet. It's how flowers bloom, not by striving, but by becoming. It's how babies are born, not by rushing, but by unfolding. So why do we treat our manifestations like urgent tasks, not sacred arrivals? Why do we think the universe needs our panic, when what it really wants is our presence? I once met someone who had been longing to move abroad. She did all the planning, made vision boards, repeated affirmations, but beneath it all, she held fear. Fear of loneliness, fear of failure. She hadn't realized that her desire and her dread were canceling each other out. When she finally acknowledged her fear, cried through it, and released it, something opened. 2 weeks later, she got an unexpected job offer overseas. Not because she forced it, but because she became clear. Receiving requires honesty. You must be brave enough to ask, what am I afraid will happen if I actually get what I want? Because often, it's not the absence of opportunity that holds us back. It's the presence of hidden resistance. And resistance isn't weakness, it's protection. But once you see it, you can love it, you can soften it, you can let it exhale. This is the alchemy of surrender. Not giving up, but giving over. Not passive resignation, but active receptivity. Not I guess I'll settle, but I trust what's mine will arrive in perfect time. It is the profound intelligence of getting out of your own way. Not to abandon the dream, but to allow it to approach without barricades. What would shift if you started preparing for what you've asked for, instead of doubting whether it will ever come? How would you dress, speak, walk, breathe if you knew your future was already on its way? Become the welcome mat. Be the warm room. Be the calm hands that hold open the door. When you release control, you release constriction. And when energy flows freely, miracles feel normal. They don't surprise you. They confirm what your inner world already knew. You're not waiting because it hasn't arrived. You're waiting because your heart is learning how to hold it. And when it does, you won't be shocked. You'll be ready. The ultimate manifestation isn't about getting what you want. It's about becoming the version of you that no longer chases. You've probably heard that before, but have you really lived it? So many of us begin the path of manifestation thinking it's about having. We make lists, set intentions, visualize outcomes. And at first, that's empowering. But over time, it can become another trap. If we're still trying to bend the outer world before we've allowed our inner world to change. The list becomes our leash. The vision board becomes a scoreboard. We find ourselves anxious, waiting for proof that it's working, missing the very point that nothing outside of us will ever deliver what we haven't first claimed within. Because true creation begins when you stop chasing and start choosing. When you stop scripting and start embodying. When you realize that you are not the separate seeker, you are the field itself. You are not asking the universe to deliver. You are allowing yourself to express the frequency of what already exists inside you. This is the most radical pause of all, the pause in identity. It's no longer about tweaking your thoughts, it's about transforming your sense of self. You're not pretending to be powerful. You're remembering that you always were. You're not faking confidence. You're peeling away the layers that told you you weren't enough. The real shift happens not when you change what you do, but when you change what you believe you are. In quantum language, this is about collapsing the separation between the observer and the observed. It's stepping into the knowing that you are not just navigating the quantum field. You are the field. Your choices, your states of being, your stillness, they don't influence the field. They are the field in motion. So instead of saying, I want love, you become love. Instead of begging for abundance, you become the embodiment of enoughness. Not someday. Now. Not in theory, but in practice. In breath, in body, in thought, in energy. This is the space where doing becomes being. And when you are being what you used to chase, the outer world mirrors it effortlessly. You walk into rooms differently. People respond differently. Opportunities find you without strain. Not because you manipulated the matrix, but because you harmonized with it. You became so rooted in your frequency that the external world could not help but rearrange to meet you. One woman told me, I stopped asking if I was ready. I just started living like I already was. And that's when everything opened. Not because she convinced the world, but because she convinced herself. Your biology listens to your energy. Your nervous system reorganizes around your dominant identity. You breathe differently, you move differently. Your entire field emits a signal that says, this is who I am now. That's why some people seem to suddenly manifest miracles. It's not sudden, it's sequential. They became a vibrational match long before the evidence appeared. They released the chase, they became the field. This way of living isn't about bypassing difficulty. It's about anchoring so deeply in your true self that even challenges become signals, not threats. You stop needing proof because you start becoming proof. You stop needing reassurance because you are rooted. In this state, life becomes a mirror, not a maze. Ask yourself, who am I being when I'm not trying to prove anything? Who am I when I stop performing and start simply existing in truth? That version of you doesn't chase. That version of you doesn't grasp. They pause, they breathe, they walk with knowing. They don't panic when things don't appear on schedule. They trust the rhythm of the field they've become. The quantum pause is not the end of effort. It's the rebirth of intention. It's not a retreat from the world. It's a return to power. From that power, anything is possible. Not because you forced it, because you became it. So if you've been spinning in the cycle of manifesting techniques, trying to get there faster, pause. The pause is not a delay. It's the bridge. It's the space between the old you and the true you. It's where the seeker becomes the source. It's where longing turns into becoming. And when you become, there's nothing left to chase. Only more of yourself to remember, more truth to reveal, more peace to allow. That is the paradox and the poetry of the pause. It gives you everything, the moment you stop needing anything. You came here to remember, not to hustle. To return, not to achieve. The quantum pause is not a trick or a trend. It is a truth as ancient as breath itself. That when you stop resisting the moment reveals everything you were trying to force into place. You are the field. You are the frequency. You are the answer to your own asking. So as you move forward, ask yourself not what more should I do, but who am I willing to become? Let your life be led not by fear, but by coherence, not by urgency, but by resonance. And when the doubt creeps in, as it will, pause again. Come back to your breath. Come back to your knowing. Come back to that still, sacred place within you where nothing needs to be proven and everything is already aligned. The quantum pause doesn't delay your destiny. It delivers it, quietly, faithfully, and in perfect timing. Now it's your turn to ask, where in your life are you still trying to chase what you could simply become? Let that question breathe in you. And when you're ready, pause, then begin. If this message moved something in you, share it with someone who's been running too fast to remember who they are. Comment your reflections below, and don't forget to subscribe for more reminders from the quiet place within you. Your stillness is sacred. Your becoming has already begun.